Alright, here we are again to continue on with our HUD. And what I did, I took a little bit of time just to make this look somewhat more appealing. It's nothing too fancy. I just used the regular GUI textures and kind of moved things around a little bit. Basically all I did was I duplicated this health bar. I haven't wired everything up yet, but I duplicated this HUD health bar to create this HUD player state, which is this little guy right here with the emergency and it's red. I used some of the assets again from what I've included. Used the blue and just changed the color to red to give it that color, and just kept the label on there and set all these up. You can kind of play around with this if you want. The numbers and setting everything up is really kind of outside of the scope of uFrame. If you want to know more about it, there's plenty of documentation on it, but it's really fairly simple. It's just a bunch of GUI textures and text, and nothing's wired up. And I added this HUD pills right here and just converted it to numbers and added two little icons to indicate. Makes it feel a little bit more like a HUD than just, text. So what I ended up doing is on the number of pills changed on the string format, I just took away the other text there. So we get just a number. So if you want to change that, it's in the player HUD view. So let's take a look at what we have. Alright, so it's always saying it's an emergency, which I guess it always is an emergency for this guy. And now you can see at the very bottom here, our stuff is adding up as we pick up the pills. Alright, so nothing more to it, nothing more, nothing less. So what we want to do is I'm going to actually create a component for this little, or a view component for this little guy here, and also this guy here, so that they look, or they both function just like the health bar. This is already wired up, but I'm going to create it in the view component form just to keep things consistent with how I've already done my HUD. So let's switch back into our element designer, go back into our player, and let's add a new component. Actually, let's add two new components, and let's call one of them the pills bar, and then call the other one the state bar, and we'll make this layer state bar. We'll just keep it a state bar. Alright, so now we've got these components. Now we just need to wire them up to the player. So let's click and drag from the component and drag to the player, because these both are going to be components of the player, and so that our views will all get access to these components. Alright, so we can hit save. Wait for it to compile. I've got warnings here. These are from the third person controller. It's nothing in uFrame exactly. So let's go into let's go ahead and fix the pills bar issue. Alright. Well, first let's go into the player HUD view. Let's go back here and let's grab this GUI text here, get it out of there, and then just copy it into here. And then now we can do public void update pill status. Just create an empty method there. And I'm just going to copy this guy right into here and say the player dot number of blue pills. Alright, let's go back and let's copy this guy. And we're going to do player dot number of red pills. And I'm just going to keep these both in the same method, so no matter what pill they pick up, I need to change that to blue, sorry. No matter what pill they pick up, it's just going to update this component. No need to keep it separate in this scenario. So now when the number of pills change, we don't even have to work with the value. We can just simply say pills bar. We have a property right there for it. Pills bar dot update pill status. And we want to copy that into both binding methods here with the number of pills, blue pills changed and number of red pills changed. Alright, so now that we've maneuvered it into this pills bar, let's go back into here, and now we need to actually apply this, and we'll just go to add component pills bar. Alright, there we go. And now let's reset up our labels. So let's just drag this. I think the blue pills was first, then drag the red pills GUI here. So, alright. So we should still be good to go. Yep, our HUD's still updating. And we're good to go. So we now have this in a single component form, which to me I feel is a little bit better design, and it's definitely more consistent with our health bar up here. Alright, so now what we want is whenever this state changes, to actually update this to do something. So what I'm going to do is actually open up the state bar, and let's go ahead and add in a public GUI text state label. So this will be the label of our state, which is right here. And then we want to add maybe the GUI texture here, so we could technically swap it out with other things depending on the state that it's currently in. So public GUI, let's say, what is that called again? GUI texture, sorry, jeez. Alright, so we have GUI texture, and it's going to be state background, or we'll just call it the background. That works. Alright, so let's go ahead and just create a method here to update the state bar. Alright, so now what we want is let's do a switch, and we'll do that on the player because we have that component in here, or we have access to the model and any of the components we attached, like I mentioned before, and do player dot current state. Alright, and then we'll create a case for full health. Put it right in our break there. Then we'll do player state dot emergency. Or actually, let's go from one to the other, running low. Alright, break. Add another one for running low or emergency. There we go. Alright, break. Alright, I'm going to add a couple more properties here just to make things easier to set up in the designer. So I'm going to say what do we want here? A color for the running low color, and make another color for the emergency color. Alright, that looks good. Alright, so now back to our switch statement. And when they're in full health, I really just want to disable this entire thing here. Just completely hide the state bar. So to do this, what I'm going to do is we have the colors, the background, and the state label. Yeah, HUD player state. And there's the label. So we know that the object is going to be attached to the GUI texture. So what I think we can do here is just say background dot game object set active false. And what we could actually do here instead is set this based off of more of a condition. So we're going to do player dot state current state is not equal to full health. So basically, if this was equals full health, it would only be active when the player state is at full health. So we want to make it active at any other state other than the full health. So we don't need this actual first case statement here. We just need the running low and emergency. So in the running low state, what we want to do here is change the background color of the background texture. So let's do background dot texture. I think it's texture. Or do we have a color there? Yeah, there we go. That's what we want. Alright. Running low color. And then we'll apply the same thing to the emergency state. Oh, great. That always scares me when it does that. I don't know if my Visual Studio is about to crash or what's going on. I'm just like, what are you doing? Alright. So the background colors now. If we're in the emergency state, emergency color. And granted, I'm moving really slow with all of this, But once you get used to this, you can really, fly through creating a game. I mean, I'm explaining it all, but honestly, throughout the entire tutorials, I could have done this whole thing probably in about an hour, and I know you can too once you get a little bit used to it and kind of how everything's set up. So hopefully at this point, you're already starting to feel a little bit more comfortable with kind of how things work. We've basically touched almost every single concept to uFrame and how everything works together. While there is more and more details, but you've basically got the general idea of how everything is set up and how it all works. You can go more into the under the hood and learn more as you need to, but you don't have to know all that to get started. You can just kind of like jump in and get going. Alright, so I'm going to do one more thing here with the emergency. And what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to have it, excuse me, blink on and off whenever it's in the emergency state. So let's go ahead and add a public float here. And add blink speed per second. Or we'll just say by seconds. And we'll go ahead and set a default value for this to 1F. And notice how all of this data has more to do with how I'm actually visually working with it. So this is all visual information. The elements themselves could care less about the state label, the background, the running low color, the emergency color, and the blink speed. It has nothing to do with that, and nor does the logic. The logic doesn't need to know about all this stuff, and nor should they be, coupled together. Keeping that logic and these type of things separate really makes it easy for you to go in and tweak gameplay without actually, potentially messing something else up in the game. We can completely have all this wired up, and as someone's working with the HUD, I can be working on the gameplay and know that we're never going to run over each other. And the only time something would change is if something, one of the properties or something changed its name or something like that. But that's a simple fix. And usually you communicate with other people when you want to do a change like that. All right, so let's do a so before we move on, I want to make note of something with the way these view model properties work. So what I'm going to do is actually go into the player controller. So if we switch back to the player controller, and notice where we were updating our current state based off of the health. So what this means is that every time the health changes, that we are going to say the current state. We're going to set the current state based off what it is. So when we set this state, it's going to actually invoke that has changed, but it's only going to happen if the value is different. So by setting this, it's not going to invoke the events if the value isn't different than what it already is. So we don't have to worry about these being, in our player, where were we? In the State bar, yes. So we don't have to worry about this, being executed each and every time that it gets set from the player controller. So whenever this gets set, if it's already at full health, it's not going to re-invoke everything because the value really didn't change. So with that being the case, we can say, all right, the if player state or player dot current state is equal to emergency, start coroutine, and we'll create one here called blink okay, we'll just call it blink. The wonders of coming up with names for things. It's one of the probably the biggest challenges in programming in itself is just coming up with a proper name for things. All right, so we have our enumerator here with the blink method. So what we're going to do is simply say while player current state is equal to player state emergency. And we'll do a yield return wait 4 seconds. Oops. New wait 4 seconds. And we'll make it so that it's the blink speed that we specified up top. So I'm just going to copy that, paste it down here, the wait for seconds. And then the background game object, we'll go ahead and do a set active. And we're just going to invert the current active state to what it already is. Alright, I think it's active. What does the message say? Doesn't really tell you the difference between active sub and active in hierarchy, and I can't recall the difference, so we'll just go active in hierarchy. Alright, so we're setting it on and off depending on if the player is in the current emergency state. So this way, if our emergency state actually changed back to something, that this coroutine would actually end. So I think everything looks good so far. We could also just throw in a, just for good measure, stop all coroutines if it's not, just to make sure that the coroutine isn't running. Alright, so I think we got something set up here. Alright, so now that our state bar is created, now we just simply have to go add it to the emergency here. So I'm going to go to our HUD view and click on the player state, HUD player state, and let's add the state bar component to it. So we have no color right now for anything, so when it's running low, we'll just keep it at maybe do a yellow, like a warning or something. And then the emergency color, we'll set that to red. Actually, my text is going to be white. It won't show up good on that yellow, so we'll just keep it at kind of what we've already got for the background. So I'm going to the background, just set it to itself. I could just drag this down as well. It's the same thing. And actually, I could keep this here. I could just drag the player HUD view over here to the view base, but I want to keep things consistent with how I've already done them, and I'm going to just copy and remove this component and put it up here because I put it in the wrong place. Alright, so now we need the state label. Alright, looks like everything's good. Let's run it. And something didn't work right, probably because we didn't I don't think we added it to our player view. Or the player HUD view, sorry. Yeah, so we don't have the binding here. So let's override this method and make sure that we tick the bind thing after we're done. So override state. Current state changed. We're just going to do state bar dot update state bar. There we go. Alright, now that we have that, let's go back to our player HUD view, and now our binding should pop up. There it is. So let's check the current state to make sure the binding does occur. Alright, so our health is going down. Alright, now it's running low. Alright, now we're at emergency and it is blinking for us. Alright, so we're back at the main menu. So now this is probably a good time to actually go in and tweak the numbers for making the game a little bit more fun. It's the fun part about creating a game, in my opinion, is to actually go in and see what you can do to make it, challenging and that type of thing. So I think you get the general idea. So if we were to do that, we could just go here, and obviously the health is moving down rather quickly, so we could adjust this to a smaller amount so the health goes down slower. So if I set it to -1, I could it's going to start going down a lot slower. So we just wait as that goes down. Or I could keep it that fast and then just go modify the pills. Let's see, in my game view, select the blue pill and change the health modifiers. So these could potentially give us a lot more health than we thought. And we could even, in our controllers, set up different difficulty levels and work things out that way, so that at the main menu they could select, a certain difficulty level. But we'll probably go into that in future tutorials. So I think this concludes most of the game series. Over time we'll continue to extend upon this, I think this gives you enough to really get started and jump into uFrame and really use the power of the code generation and the diagrams and all of the ease of how to do things. And there's a lot we want to do with this, the whole diagram stuff, and there's a lot more we can add to it. But like I said before, I really wanted to get this beta out so you can get used to the whole diagram stuff, and people can start throwing in ideas and all kinds of fun stuff with that. So it's working pretty solidly as of right now. So you can definitely get started creating your game. There won't be any major changes, anything that would put you in a bad position. So you're totally ready to go. You're ready to start creating whatever game you want using this system. But we do plan on further extending this and even making some of the controllers more visual. Maybe doing some kind of other back-end game logic processing where you can actually create commands similar to how uBehaviors works. And also, probably more immediately, we're going to add where you can actually go ahead and just define the properties for your components directly in the component. This will help speed things up even more, especially as you're first planning out your game before you actually get into coding, so you could even have the components somewhat laid out before you actually go in and wire everything up. Alright, so that concludes this tutorial, and thanks for watching.